Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. We all default to a particular approach to interaction, whether professionally or personally. We're either more or less intellectual, more or less patient, advice giving, interruptive, and so on. Of course, we're more effective if we can be flexible. That's important in most interaction, but especially so in managing people, and even more so for helping professionals. Because of that, and because this originally appeared in Psychology Today, I'm going to use helping professionals as the examples here. The first kind of flexing that you might want to do, you should do, is regarding advice giving. You'll want to restrain yourself from giving advice and instead mainly play facilitator when your client is ideationally fluent, has the knowledge base to come up with his or her own ideas, when your own fund of ideas in that domain that you're discussing is limited, and especially if the person says he or she is looking for a sounding board. So, for example, in that case, let's say a career counseling client like that says that she is frustrated that she's been, quote, laid off twice in the past 2 years. You might ask something like, as you revisit your experiences on those jobs, what do you think were the causes? And after she answers, you might ask, anything else? In contrast, if you believe your client has poor knowledge of or poor judgment in the domain that you're discussing, and a facilitator approach hasn't yielded sufficient benefit, and especially if the client explicitly asks for your opinion, you'll want to offer a suggestion, although almost always in a way that is empowering or at least face-saving for the client. For example, let's say a client is trying to save their marriage and is troubled by one of the partners being quite limit-setting in the way they parent. The other parent is quite laissez-faire. So you might ask something like, I'm wondering if you've tried asking your partner what he or she believes is at the root of his philosophy of parenting. The next way you might want to flex to enhance your communication is in invoking of the past. You're going to want to invoke the person's past problem or problems if your efforts to help the client move forward based on here and now considerations have failed. You also would look to the person's past if he or she expresses certitude that their inability to move forward is rooted in childhood. For example, complaining that his or her parents relentlessly calls that person stupid and flighty. Otherwise, rather than reinforcing the person's focus on an impossible-to-change past, it's usually wise to focus on identifying the wisest goal or goals and baby steps moving forward. For example, you might say something like, yeah, it must have been psychologically as well as physically painful for your parents to believe in corporal punishment. What do you see as the wisest steps moving forward from here? The next kind of flexing you might want to do to be an effective communicator is with regard to your speed. Some people, some clients, need lots of processing time. For example, before beginning a substantive conversation, or a client session, you might take an extra minute or two for small talk to allow the person to get comfortable. And more central, you may need to speak slowly and after they've finished an utterance to allow a second or so before you speak to help ensure that they don't have anything to add that they needed a little more time to process before they could say it. But with speedier processing clients, you can speak more quickly. Some clients prefer the energy and efficiency of a rapid exchange, even in an interruptive exchange. Indeed, we've all known people who appreciate their romantic partners knowing what they're going to say before they even finish it. The next area of flexing to help your communication is in the degree of supportiveness. Generally, especially people who consult helping professionals, prefer being supported to being challenged. Plus, supporting the person's take builds their confidence, which usually is a good thing. That said, some people have the destructive combination of often being wrong, yet insistent they're right. For example, I have a client who demonstrates anger so much to supervisees, to spouse, to child, and it's clear to me he's often wrong. Yet he usually insists he's right. It's often appropriate for the helping professional, or for an example, an employee's supervisor, to try to break through that armor. Sometimes that can be done delicately with tactful questioning, but other times that armor is so impervious that shaking the client from self-destructive certitude and complacency requires a disequilibrating confrontation. For example, you've been let go for 2 jobs because the boss says your coworkers hate your short fuse. Your wife left you because she said you're a hothead, and you've told me that your son is afraid of you. And when you give me examples of what triggers you, I have to say, I believe you're often not correct. Like all of us, we have to accept our fallibility, and that, except in rare circumstances, anger hurts you more than helps you. I believe it's wise for you and I to take a hard look at those situations to see if there are lessons to be learned. You said you want to become better liked. I think that's a path forward. What do you think? The next area of flexing to help communication is intellectual level. As with most human characteristics, people vary widely in intellect, that is, the ability to reason and communicate complexly. We must flex to accommodate to the person we're interacting with. That's less important if you're not the sharpest tool in the shed. You can't interact more intelligently than you're capable of. But if you are intelligent, you do need to dial it down with people you sense don't think or communicate as rigorously as you can. The next area to flex, and the final of the 6, is focusing on fact versus focusing on feeling. Some people are moved more by fact explanations or fact arguments than feeling arguments, or vice versa. If you sense the person you're communicating with is more fact-centered, you'll want to propose a rational basis for any suggestions you offer. You'll offer facts, you might offer a statistic, you might offer simply an a priori logical argument. You might, if you're a professional who's a helping professional, you might assign fact-based reading for homework. In contrast, if you sense that your conversation partner is more feeling-centric, you'll probably want to listen more and talk less, use feeling terms and anecdotes in sharing thoughts and proposals, and in an emotionally supportive way. For example, rather than citing data, you might say, I have the feeling that our work group will feel better about each other and the work we're doing if we streamline that process. How do you feel about that? The takeaway here? Rarely can a short lecture or an article accommodate the wide range of people and situations, but I hope this will encourage you to consider replacing some of your one-size-fits-all interaction with what I'm calling chameleon communication. Thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.